Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. GASM, the nation builder. Vodafone. The future is exciting, ready, and nationwide medical health insurance. Your health care family. Now, it was in March this year that the Bank of Ghana took over the management of Unibank and appointed an official administrator to save the bank from imminent collapse. The administrator, KPMG, was given 6 months to turn around the fortunes of the bank. Well, with only 2 months left for its work to expire, Joy News is learning that KPMG is still pursuing government to settle its huge indebtedness to the bank, which it says will help to alleviate the current liquidity challenges that is still threatening to cripple the bank. Now, Joy News has secured documents detailing a debt of almost $1 billion cedis owed Unibank by government and the attempts by KPMG to get the finance ministry to pay up. My colleague George Yafe joins me, has been digging into this also with some updates on what KPMG has been doing so far in the last 4 months to try and turn around the fortunes of the bank. But I've just also been joined in the studio by my colleague Ernest Menu, who has a copy of a document that we've secured, and this document is from.
So this document is a letter that Unibank wrote to the finance minister, and essentially they are asking the finance ministry to help them retrieve some money that government has to pay to the bank.
When was this letter written?
22nd is dated 22nd June 2018.
Okay, well, what does it say?
So it says that government and government-related receivables we wish to bring to your attention and request that you use your good offices to assist Unibank receive overdue amounts from government and government-related entities. These receivables totaling 868,973,591 and 10 pesos million Ghana cedis. As at May 31, 2018, we have a table below.
We'll go to the table shortly because it details how government incurred this debt and how Unibank loaned this money to government. But it ends by saying
that a timely response will in no doubt help in alleviating the current liquidity challenges, Evans, facing the bank and minimize the impact the delay in settling these amounts is having on depositors. Yours faithfully, Simon Donyo, that's for KPMG official administrator.
Is it copied to anybody?
And it's copied to the head of banking supervision, Bank of Ghana.
Okay, so and it's signed by the KPMG rep because KPMG, as I indicated, was appointed by the Bank of Ghana as official administrator, and so they have been in charge of managing the affairs of the bank over the last 4 months. They've been given the 6 month mandate to turn around the fortunes of this particular bank. Now we have a second letter, and this is a reply from the Ministry of Finance to this particular one, Ernest, you just read out, and I want to quickly go through that. And this is it's a letter, and you see the stamp on it says received 12 July 2018 the corporate office. This is Unibank received this reply, and it says, we acknowledge receipt, and of course it's on the Republic of Ghana letterhead, Finance Ministry. We acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 22nd June 2018 on the above subject. Ministry of Finance appreciates your role as official administrator for Unibank. Ministry of Finance is currently validating the numbers together with Bank of Ghana, and as soon as practicable will revert with full details as requested. Our appreciation and anticipation of your usual cooperation. This has been signed by the Honorable Charles Edubuahin, who is a Deputy Minister for the Substantive Minister. And of course, it's addressed to Simon Donu, who is a KPMG official administrator of the Unibank Accra. And of course, it's copied to the Minister himself, the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, and also the Chief Director of the ministry in question. And I want to quickly go through the breakdown as we have it quickly. You see at the top there's Get Fund there.
There's Get Fund.
Amount of money that was given to Get Fund.
So Get Fund took 1,509,755 and 10 pesos from the bank. They're supposed to pay an interest of 514,206, and so a total of 2,023,961 and 10 pesos. Is what Get Fund owes Unibank.
What about COCOBOD?
Now, COCOBOD took a principal of 101,903,729 million Ghana cedis and 18. Okay, now they're supposed to pay interest of 35,596,056 and 80 pesos. And so a total of 137,499,785 and 98 pesos is what COCOBOD owes Unibank.
And of course, if you look at the detail, there's far more. You have the road fund itself that also took from Unibank a loan of 180 million with an interest of 49 million, and of course, in the total, the amount due currently is 229 million that has to be paid, and there are other government contractors altogether.
MOF,
taking an amount of 52 million from Unibank, and they have to amount due date is still 52 million. There are BDCs. In fact, the BOG itself.
Yeah, exactly.
19 million CDs there. And amount due currently is still 19 million.
And the Ministry of Finance itself.
I see the Ministry of Finance, the MOF, Ministry of Finance itself, took a loan from, I'm guessing, and George will explain there's a bit more, 162 million Ghana cedis from Unibank, and they had to pay an interest of 60 million. And the total amount due currently is 223 million cedis. Now, and if you read the letter that the administrator had written, and as you just read, the administrator, which was appointed by the Bank of Ghana, themselves,
and this KPMG,
yes, acknowledge that these amounts must be paid, and that if they are paid at the earliest convenience, it could help in turning around the fortunes, which is the mandate that
and
they
in
were
fact
giving.
the bank did indicate in that letter just below there that they are willing to give further and better particulars as well if the finance ministry would invite them to clarify, because there were some doubts that were raised on some of the figures.
Okay. So there are a few questions, and George joins me. Hello, George.
Hi.
I know you've been following this very closely. There are a few questions that this raised, and Ernest, thank you very much, that this raised, because I've been reconciling this document with the initial statement that the Bank of Ghana released on 20th March 2018, when they announced the handing over of the bank to the official administrator, in which it says in one of the paragraphs here, I want to read, it says, quote, in spite of the Ministry of Finance recently agreeing to absorb a significant amount of the debts of government contractors owed to the bank to the tune of 428 million cedis, backed by interim payment certificates issued to contractors, the bank has not been able to address its capital deficiency, which has continued to deteriorate. Now, the question then is, this was in March that the Bank of Ghana said that the finance ministry had agreed to absorb this amount of money. And so we still have, as of July 12, the administrator itself now saying to the Bank of Ghana that you haven't still paid us and we want that money settled. Another question that it raises is, and if you look at the response that the finance ministry wrote back to the administrator that the BOG appointed, it says they are validating. It begs the question, in March when they put out this figure, what was it based on? Was it based on a validated figure?
I think that at that process, they were still trying to go through the numbers to establish the actual position of the bank. And we also understand that government issued some bonds and the bank as well bought it. So what we understood then was that they were still trying to balance the numbers out and see whether we can pay them, whether we can use those bonds to even out the numbers and all those things.
But if that's the case, why did the BOG then say that the ministry has agreed to absorb that amount?
Maybe at that time that was the position, but an external person got in. They were still going through the numbers, and maybe they were able to establish that indeed the amount was bigger
far more than
what
400
we
million.
estimated earlier on. So that is what is out. How do we settle this amount? There are certain bonds that were issued, they bought. How can we work out all these numbers to ensure that they get their money and we also move on?
And the other key question then and that I ask is, if you look at the government response, if that is the case, in the response that the finance minister wrote to the administrator, shouldn't he have stated that, listen, we've paid out this amount already?
From the letters that we've seen, it's clear that the two parties themselves think that the amounts might be bigger than what we all initially estimated. So why don't we conclude the process? But it looks like KPMG, reputable
they have 2 months to go. They have 2 months to wrap up their management.
Yes. Don't forget that recently an interim report was sent to the Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
And one of them was for shareholders to recapitalize the bank. And we understand the position should be somewhere more than 5 billion Ghana cedis to try and deal with the situation. So either the shareholders bring in those capital to help save the bank, or several options that are also being put across. You bring in an investor to acquire the bank, or you put across a similar arrangement like the GCB taking over the good assets of Capital and UT Bank. Or another scenario that has also been put forward is that maybe put the bank up, create a new bank, and then let's do away with the bad assets.
What do you make of KPMG's note in this letter they wrote that if government settles its debt to the bank, it will alleviate the current liquidity challenges facing the bank? Obviously, they believe that almost $1 billion could go a long way in trying to help them.
It could help, but
if
you engage some of the actors in this whole transaction, it appears the money is far bigger than what we've been told. So maybe somewhere around 6 billion or even 7 billion. It could help with the current situation the bank is going through. If it's about 1 billion Ghana cedis, it might help stabilize things a little bit with respect to the liquidity problems that the bank might be going through. Because, Evans, what is happening right now is that the spillover effect of these liquidity problems in the commercial banks are being felt in the savings and loan sector, and as well as the microfinance, and what some people will call the contagion effect. So if a bank is having problems in meeting the liquidity position, don't forget there are several parties that they have to service. And today you hear microfinance. Even today, there's one microfinance company that people rise there. They're trying to get their money, and they cannot get it.
Yeah, and I remember in the early days of when we had the general banking challenge, there are a lot of concerns that a lot of the banks were struggling because government owed them so much.
Yeah, that was a factor.
Do we know if, clearly from what we're hearing from Unibank, it appears government hasn't still settled this debt to Unibank?
Interestingly, if you look at the Bank of Ghana report on loans that they fear might go bad, it's over 8 billion Ghana cedis. Now, interestingly, when you do a breakdown of that loan, what we get the understanding from the Bank of Ghana is that it appears that more private sector firms are owing these banks. Okay. So about 80 or even 90-10. But when you engage these contractors, they are saying that we rendered services for government.
Yeah.
So I went to take this facility from the bank because I was constructing maybe
and probably the government backed it.
Yeah.
You know.
So if government pays me, I'll be able to pay the bank back. Yeah. What is happening in the banking sector? We are not having fresh capital in the banks. And that is what the Bank of Ghana is pushing for this recapitalization.
But the interesting thing about the amount owed Unibank is that the other government contractors says 52 million. But if you look at what the road fund, the GET fund, even the MOF, the Ministry of Finance itself, owes it. That's 162 million.
But even the flip side also is that you engage some government officials and they raise issues about how these arrangements were worked out between Unibank and these contractors. So they are still in the process of trying to establish whether the necessary due diligence was done in these contracts and these agreements and all the rest, and whether they still have to pay these monies or not.
And then it raises the question whether in March you handed the bank over. It's been 4 months, still validating that period that has elapsed. Just hold your horses, because I understand that we've just been joined on the telephone line by a member of the Finance Committee, and he's been raising red flags about the health of the local banks, the banking sector, and the health of local banks generally. Isaac Adongo joins me on the telephone line. Mr. Adongo, apologies, I understand you've been online for a while. I'm grateful that you joined us here on Top Story. I think we've lost him very briefly. We'll try and reconnect with him shortly. But that is one of the key points that has been raised.
And again, we talk about what some would say the contagion effect. What is happening right now is that because of these reports flying around about the health of the local banks, we have a situation where most of these people are pulling their funds out of these local banks to the multinationals and even taking it to some other companies that are said to be involved in some derivatives trading.
Hold your horses again, George. Mr. Abdogo, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you and your listeners.
Surprised to hear that 4 months into its work, KPMG is still chasing government to settle almost $1 billion cedis to Unibank. I know you have raised concerns about government's indebtedness to these local banks, which is maybe contributing to the challenges that a lot of them will be facing.
Yes, I think this matter has been outstanding for quite a long time. If you recall, several months ago, I had indicated that even the recapitalization issue in the banking sector could have been largely addressed if government had fulfilled its obligation to contractors and businessmen who then owe those money to the banks, and for which those banks have had to downgrade their capital because of the requirement for reporting on overdue loans. And that amount stood at some 5.7 billion. If you look at what we are looking for recapitalization, we are looking at 280 million per bank, and you will notice that most of them already will not even be needing additional funding. And in total, we shouldn't be getting close to 6 billion from this recapitalization. So 5.7 billion would have basically addressed the liquidity challenge. But for that of Unibank, it is worrying because we knew that Unibank had a difficulty in his capital adequacy, essentially because it had written up close to 1 billion Ghana cedis owed to it by contractors who are owed by government. And that would have already restated 1 billion and wouldn't have gone the route of taking administration for this. But it is also interesting because the roadmap that Unibank has given needs to be given very serious attention. Unibank only in July paid 200 million Ghana cedis as part of its obligation. That is about 1 billion. If you add this 1 billion, that gives you almost 2 billion. They are committed to bring in an additional 2 billion or 2.7 billion by the end of September. And they have given a total asset portfolio of 4.4 billion Ghana cedis. In fact, Unibank would have been overcapitalized more than any other bank in Ghana. And so why will a bank like that go down? It doesn't give a good example and motivation to local entrepreneurs, and it doesn't encourage anybody to undertake the difficult task of building a bank to support the economy and to build the economy that we are all struggling to build. And so in my view, government has to step in, and I believe that His Excellency the President would work very closely with the stakeholders to ensure that this bank is safe, because that would be a very bad indictment on the people of Ghana, and we cannot allow such a local bank to go down.
I've also heard, and George has dug into this, that if you look at the amount that the Bank of Ghana owes Unibank, it's just a tiny fraction of what is really wrong with the bank, and that if even government has settled its debt to it in full, it won't still bring it up to the point where you could say it's a viable financial entity.
Yes, like I'm saying, it will be the overcapitalized bank in Ghana. Putting all the banks together, no bank would have the level of capital that Unibank would have if the roadmap is fully followed and the government meets its obligation to Unibank. We would have one of the most strongest banks in the industry and one of the best that we could ever dream about in Ghana. And I don't see how we cannot save such a bank. And we need to make sure that this does not happen, because it will give a very bad indication to the investor community and will struggle to attract investment to this country, particularly into the banking sector.
KPMG has 2 months more to wrap up his work and then of course hand over either back to the Bank of Ghana. What's your own expectation with what you understand might happen at the end? And George has told us about KPMG's own plan and the options they've given to the Bank of Ghana already, and one includes closing the bank entirely and hand over to somebody else to take over.
Why will you hand over a bank that has given a roadmap that would overcapitalize a bank by over 5 billion Ghana cedis when the minimum capital you're expecting is 400 million? This bank will be overcapitalized to the tune of 5 billion. Why would anybody want to close such a bank? But I'm saying that what I expect is that Unibank and the Bank of Ghana and KPMG has to make a pronouncement on the roadmap provided by shareholders to KPMG and to Bank of Ghana and to government, and to make a definitive statement that gives encouragement to the people of Ghana that one of our own, one of our best, will be saved and will become the shining star in the banking industry for many, many years to come. And I do believe that that will be the path that will make all of us happy once again and secure the jobs and secure the future of the numerous Ghanaians that depend on this bank.
Isaac Adongo is a member of the Finance Committee. Thank you very much for joining us. George.
But also one clarity that these facilities were not taken under this government.
Okay.
I mean, there was a previous administration, of course. But again, if you listen to the regulator as well, there are certain serious revelations coming out of Unibank.
Tell me.
And some you still want to double check as in what went on during the period that the regulator had to come in and try and stabilize things. So they believe that a lot of things had gone wrong as a commercial bank, and therefore an external party was needed to come and clean up the system in the bank. And it raises some serious issues as well with respect to how the bank, and this is what the regulator is saying, how the bank was run over the period.
And clearly, if you read the statement they issued in March, it detailed a number of these concerns.
Serious allegations that one would ask that really they had to come this far before the regulator should have acted in trying to clean up what they seem as the mess in the bank.
John, thank you very much. If you join us, we've been trying to reach of course, the Finance Ministry on this. They've not been available for comment yet. And, of course, the Bank of Ghana as well, just to try and understand where we are in the process of dealing with the challenges that were identified with the bank and the government's own indebtedness to it. They talk about validating the claims, which, again, we want to get some updates on.
And even one serious thing is about when I spoke about the contagion effect and how these challenges are impacting on the entire financial system. Again, it raises a lot of questions about good corporate governance practices in the several commercial banks out there and how it has gotten to this situation that is bad, that the regulator has now been taking certain tough measures to try and deal with the situation.
Joe, thank you very much. More on this. Once we get the Finance Ministry's response to this, we've already made contact with the officials there. We'll bring you details. Still ahead, later on Newsnight, in 5 minutes, the Ghana Medical Association accused government of bad faith as meetings and negotiations get underway in the desperate attempt by government to avert a crippling nationwide strike.
Government requested for 1 month. We said no, we'll give you an extra month. So the deadline was June 30th. And today is July 30th. We think we have struggled enough. We've come to our wits.
Well, details from the meeting that we understand is currently underway. We understand the Ghana Medical Association itself is not part of that particular meeting, but we're having details from government and the Labour Commission already trying to see if they can address the concerns that the Ghana Medical Association had put out and are threatening a strike starting next Monday. Details of that coming up on Newsnight. Stay with us in 5 minutes.
Okay, Kwesi, for the grand prize, answer this final question. Which of these electronic services does Bond offer for your convenience? A. Internet banking.